Hello, everyone. Students from the honors seminar, Power of Music, with Professor Dr. Ju-Yong. My name is Anthony Rauche. I taught at the university for quite a long time, and Dr. Ha has asked me to come and give a couple little talks to you about Native American music. And what we're going to do is go through the PowerPoint, and then you can listen to the examples that are linked in the PowerPoint on your own whenever you have time. Even this whole lecture, you can listen to part of it and then come back and listen to more so that all the elements sink in bit by bit. Native American music may be something that's new to you, or perhaps you know about Native music somewhat. It was something that I started to study as the first music outside of Western classical music. So I've been very interested in it for a long time. Um, so we're going to talk about some elements and little guides, little bits and pieces, guides for listening and things I'll give you as we go through the examples. And again, you can come back to this as you listen. Okay, so here we go. This first slide is a map of the North American native culture areas. Culture areas in anthropology are fundamentally based on language. That's the first sort of distinguishing characteristic of any community or any group. So it's not surprising that scholars were studying language. This happened very intensively at the end of the 19th century in the United States. The government sent out folks all over the place to find the languages. In the East, many of the languages had died or were spoken by just a few folks, but lots of languages were flourishing still in the latter half of the 19th century in the middle of the country, on the plain states, and of course in the Southwest Pueblos. So when the scholars started to put all of this together, they came up with these basic culture areas. I'm looking at the PowerPoint now as we talk about it, so forgive me for looking away. You'll notice these are big areas, number one. They also have nothing to do with our modern day political boundaries. The big area in the center of the continent goes right up into Canada. So these are constructed based on distinguishing features, principally, as I said, language, but other culture areas. For the musical side of things, this works nicely. We can listen to a sample of music from each area. We can also take a look at a few specialty musics, or musical practices that are there. And you'll see you have an Eastern Woodlands, a Southeast, then you have a Plains, a big Central Plains, the Southwest, the Pueblo people, we call them, the Great Basin area, Utah, very important, as we'll see. Then we have the coast, the California Yuma area, and then going up the West Coast, Pacific Northwest, and then Arctic. And we have a broad section of Arctic Inuit or Eskimo people, Copper Eskimo, Hudson Bay Eskimo, throughout the area. So subtleties would be found there. The music from each of these areas is quite distinct. That's the first thing to think about. You and I have heard probably a lot of music from the plains in TV shows and movies. That's what people used. So we all think boom, bum, 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 boom, bum, bum. It's very crazy, but it's based on a one particular style. But that's not the only style. Even when we learn the styles and hear them, they still might be foreign. The singing, the way people sing, the quality of the voice, the character of the music itself. And it challenges our ideas about what music is. It also challenges other ideas about ownership and also power, directly power. And this is your seminar, Power of Music. Power is really central to Native American music. I can tell you something right off the bat. We hear a song, something you love by a favorite performer, and we say, oh, it's very powerful. Or, that's very meaningful to me. Oh, you know, we go crazy for it. But Native people speak of music as actually having power. That power is really contained within songs. For example, Blackfoot people in the plains, Athabascan speakers, Blackfoot people, among others, will get songs. They don't compose them, but they receive them in a dream. So already there's a mystical, spiritual connection. And they also say that the song has power. Not only that, they very often will have a little totem or little item that represents the power of the song, like an eagle claw or feather, um, or some other animal totem. Think about the fact that we have rabbit's foots for good luck. Not so unusual. But they really believe that the power is within the song. Now that's very different. People in the south west area, the Mescalero Apache, have a very distinct view about power and songs and who can sing them. So we'll try to cover these things as we go along, but remember that power is really central when native people speak about songs. So it's not just a song, it's something, we might say song and dance and ritual and storytelling and myth and other elements combined, all are part of this great cultural core for Native people. So those are the areas, and we're going to try to go through them fairly quickly so you just have an idea of what to do, what to listen for, okay? So from here we move to number 1. This is the Plains musical style. As I said, this is the TV and film sound. And I put some folks up there, Blackfoot, Dakota Sioux, Cheyenne people, names you might know, as representative. What we always hear is drums and rattles. We hear a large drum. It's played by maybe 4 or 5 or more, many more people sometimes, but it's a large drum that's played. Now, there's a subtlety the way they drum, but we don't have time to listen to 50 different examples to hear that, so don't worry. But it's drum. The songs are fairly short, but they're in distinct sections, some of which get repeated. They don't all get repeated, but some are repeated. So A, B, C, B, C, there's repetition, but it's not complete. So scholars, not wanting to be complex, said, this is incomplete repetition. So that's what we talk about. Short songs that get repeated. Now, they have a large melodic range. And we're going to talk about melodic range, and I know Dr. Ha has spoken about this. So you should know that when I say large melodic range, it's like the range of the national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? That's a pretty wide melodic range. What's a moderate melodic range? Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Bum, 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 may do. Da, dee, 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 dee. Moderate, not too high, not too low. What's a narrow, little range? Think of 3 blind mice. 3 blind mice, see how they run. Bum, bum, bum. Short little phrases, tiny. Large melodic range, the national anthem. Moderate melodic range, happy birthday. Tiny melodic range, 3 blind mice. Okay? This is a large melodic range in the plains. And what we hear when the plains people sing is a characteristic starting or from the very top and coming down. So that the A section, the first section, is always the highest. B is lower, C is lowest. So you have this terrace shape. It's not like a continuous flow, but it's like 1, 2, 3. There's a thing. Okay, there's a stopping, uh, sort of jumping terrace. High to low descending contour. They use extreme vocal tension and pulsation. Um, it's shrill. It's a harsher sound. It's maybe surprising, but that's what they do. The pulsation is technically different between men and women, but again, that's a subtlety which, if we were doing more classes on this, we talk about. But the one thing that the last item, which will be connected to other examples, is the use of vocables and lexical text. Now, what does that mean? You already know what that means. I've been speaking to you with words that you understand. That's lexical text. It has meaning. Like a lexicon is a book that gives you definitions, basically. So we say lexical or meaningful text. That's what we usually use. Vocables are nonsense syllables. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, fa la 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 la. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. Nobody ever asks, what does the I-E-I-O mean? But we know that it goes with the song. It's a vocable. And of course, we have lots of sounds, syllables, scat in jazz, for example, scat singing, right? And people pick and choose. Native people use certain vocables. They're not sort of interchangeable in that sense. So we would hear vocables and lexical text. Just remember vocables, nonsense syllables. Okay? Now, the example that you're going to listen to with the link is a men's grass dance. And this is from a fairly recent recording, you see 2018, and it's from a typical powwow. Powwow is a big picnic. At least that's the way Native people talk about it in Oklahoma when it started. The powwows are now being held all around the country. Musically, it's interesting that this Plains musical style is very prominent in all of the powwows that you might see and hear. You'll hear the drummers, and then you hear the one thing that you might note is the change of the drumming pattern. One of the drummers reaches in and has some very significant accented beats. Those are called honor beats. The drummers are talking to the dancers. So that's one characteristic. But that's a nice example of the grass dance, social dance, very popular. Okay? Number 2, Eastern Woodlands. Eastern Woodlands is some people here with Chippewa, Wampanoag, if you're from Connecticut or Massachusetts, Creek people from the Southeast. This is really moderate. You'll see at the end, I say moderate melodic range, moderate pulsation. These are simple rhythm, simple meter, short phrases. But what they have in their form is something we call antiphonal singing or call and response form. A leader sings a phrase, everybody sings it back. Hey, da, da, hey, da. You go back and forth. We know other times we use that. Now, the question is why or how? Well, some folks believe that Native people learned this and heard this from West Africans who were brought to the continent as slaves, because an important feature of West African drumming and singing is a call and response pattern among the different rhythmic elements. Again, that's a very interesting topic, but we don't have time for it. But know that you'll hear this. The range is moderate, happy birthday size. Pulsation in the voice and the tension in the voice, that's all moderate, nothing dramatic. And they again use vocables and lexical text. So you get some similar elements, but some new elements. Now, the example I've given you here, number 2, is a stomp dance song. Yes, it's stomping. You got to stomp. It's from an older recording, 1999. It's just a very good example of this Creek Eastern Woodlands style. So I hope you enjoy it, okay? Now, the third big area, and I think I think of plains and eastern woodlands and this now Southwest Pueblo style. These are the three big areas. Uh, Geographically, they're big areas. Hopi, Zuni, Papago, people in New Mexico and Arizona that you might have heard of. Um, these are longer songs, much longer songs, complex and independent rhythms. In the other styles we've talked about, the rhythm, the drums stay the same. Here, the drum can have its own pattern, um, and be this. The phrasing can vary from what is in the melody. And you have different drums and rattles that are used. Long, complex sectional songs. Usually, they have a very wide melodic range, again, like plains, but the shape is very different. They tend to start low and then move up like a little arch and then come back down. So you have low, moving up to high, back to low. Very nice shape. They're very relaxed vocal styles. They're way, laid back, very comfortable. No tension. It's a very different kind of sound. And still they use vocables and lexical text. Okay? Now this example is the Zuni rain dance. It's a nice example because rain is very important in the Southwest. Of the two things that the Zuni people and the Hopi people are known for are rain and corn. In fact, corn pollen is used as anointing in some ceremonies. So it has a great significance. And it's very, you may say, why? Well, it's very basic. Corn as a food, and water you need to grow the corn. So it's not unusual that these figure in the music as well. Now, there's no data on this recording, but I like the example, so I'm going to let you hear it. The shape is there. You'll hear some independent rhythmic things, and that'll all be lovely. You'll have a nice example. So if you listen, even if you take time now to go back and listen to watch the PowerPoint about plains and then eastern woodlands and Southwest Pueblo, and listen to these three examples, you'll have a very good, clear basis for comparison, all right, among these three musical styles. Okay, now California Yuman musical style. Yuman, Y-U-M-A, Yuma, California Yuma, you know that. Havasupai, Yuma, and Mojave, the Mojave Desert. So these are all people from the western edge of the continent. They have something called a rise form. I think it's subtle. It's hard to hear, and frankly, it's you hear it once or twice, and then it sort of disappears. What scholars noticed was that the music was on one level in these short little songs, and then it moved to a higher level. And that was it. One level, going up, higher level. Pretty straightforward. Moderate melodic range, relaxing style, no pulsation, and still vocables and lexical or meaningful text. So these are little songs that you might like. Now, this is from an older recording, 1951, from the Smithsonian. Doesn't provide any information, but the example is clear, and you do hear the song move to the higher section as it progresses, as it unfolds. Okay? Normally, I'd be asking if you have any questions, but if you have questions, I can't answer them. Jot them down. Professor Ha will answer all your questions. Now we go up to the Inuit and Northwest Coast musical style. Oh, and there are some very interesting things up here. On the coast, you have people like the Kwakiutl and the Bella Coola and the Tlingit. The Bella Coola are people around Vancouver in Canada, British Columbia, Canada. The Bella Coola and the Bella Bella. And in fact, these were some of the first people studied in the early 20th century by an anthropologist from Chicago, Franz Boas. And native people had been studied in this lower in the U.S. by many folks, scholars, business people. We have recordings from sea captains who traveled to South America and made recordings. Probably because I loved her so much and learning about her, I want to tell you about Frances Densmore. If you saw Frances Densmore, you'd think she would look very much like a grandmother or Sunday school teacher, print dress and a little hat. But Frances Densmore went out and recorded, wrote down her observations, her notes, about as many native culture groups as she could. The music and all the details of daily life, ceremonial life, gender activities, men, women, what they do, children. These are all made available by the Bureau of Ethnology from the US government at the turn of the century. They were all reprinted, and in fact, they should all be in the music library at the university, if they're still there. But she did more than just about anybody else. So here we come to the Pacific Northwest coast. Much more rhythmic complexity. But again, these are simple forms, simple songs. They're like recitation. So they don't use a lot of notes. They're more like Three Blind Mice, but there are some Eskimo Inuit songs that use only 2 different pitches. And that's surprising, perhaps. And we don't tend to find a lot of instruments. They do have big drums, shallow drums, but not a lot of drums. Why, you might say? Well, it's cold, and you're going to use skins for clothing, so you're not going to try to create a lot of drums. It's a very practical thing. They do have fans, dance fans, made from fur and other things. And in some video, you might see people wearing big gloves as a kind of replacement for holding a little dance fan. Small melodic range, relaxing style. I give you some of those vocables and lexical text. Now, on the list here on the slide is throat game songs. This is very interesting, and it's only among Inuit women. You can imagine, they're together, they're taking care of children, they're dealing with food, preparations, and things. They created this type of song, a game song, to pass the time. And if you see the video, now there are contemporary groups in Canada, you see that people stand very close together. And what they do is make complementary rhythms. But they do it by ingression. That sound when somebody scares you. Instead of air going out, it goes in. So you make up a rhythm. And someone standing very close to you makes a complementary rhythm. So get some mouthwash and get a friend and try to do this together once you see the video. It's a lot. They do this. They sing these little songs, and they have regular songs, the styles, things I've talked about. But these are a specialty song, and you say, well, why did they do it? Well, this is where I would say, what do you know? And you probably would have the right answer. They get a little high. Because they're standing so close together, they lose a little oxygen, and they get a little buzz. And that relieves the tedium in the cold. Can you imagine? So throat game songs are really wonderful. So here, for this area, this culture area, there's a Kwakiutl Raven song sung by Chief Billy Asu. That was collected in 1947. It's very good. The next one, the Copper Eskimo song, To Quiet a Raging Storm, you'll see was recorded in 1915. Yes, I'm going to make you listen to something from 1915 that's full of scratchiness, because I want you to realize that people did this. People were trying to capture what was there before it disappeared. Okay? And then the throat game songs. All right? So you have some examples that are audio only, but then there's a video example. So you get to see what's going on. So you have two of those in the throat game songs. I think we're going to stop there for a moment, and then we'll be back. Okay? Thank you.